Welcome to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox. True stories with a side of wine. Looking for inspiration for your life and your wine glass? This is your podcast. Here's Kirsten.
Hello, and welcome to the Wines and Wonders podcast. I am so excited. I have my first guest in the studio today. I've never done on the Wines and Wonders podcast. I've never had a guest in. So I have Dannielle Bryan from the Shamanic Twist and the Shamanic Institute. And I am going to be asking her questions about the coronavirus and the fear that I see permeating the world right now and the effect of it. And what does that mean to each of us and how we can possibly change a reaction that we're having. If we're having an overly fearful reaction, maybe we can soften that a little. That would help us in our lives. And after I talked to Dannielle about the coronavirus and where we are now, and then her tools for allowing us to take in more of what we need that might fill our lives better than the fear right now, I will pair a wine to the coronavirus, which will be an interesting pairing for all of us, but one that I feel you will understand as we go forward. So we're going to start right now with Dannielle. Welcome, Dannielle.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and what is a shaman? It's kind of an unusual word for U.S. listeners.
It is, although possibly becoming more mainstream these days. So what I do, I'm a master practitioner and teacher of shamanic energy medicine. And so I work with people in shifting patterns, creating more of what they want, being able to release and overcome past events, trauma, old stories that have happened in their lives, physical things that they're not able to heal in conventional and traditional ways because the root of what's going on physically may be held emotionally and spiritually. So I'm able to work with people one-on-one and help them shift through and transform aspects that they would like to bring new engagement in their life. And I teach the practices and principles of the shamanic path. And the work that I practice, that I study, that I use in my personal life, that I've made a deep dive study into is the shamanic practices of South America. So the path that I work with is rooted in South American traditions, the Andean traditions, the Incan traditions. So there are many, many, many different shamanic paths in the world. There's African shamanism, Celtic shamanism, North American shamanism. There's the Aboriginal shamanism. So the word shaman actually is Siberian in nature, Mongolian shamanism. And the definition of shaman is the one who can see and navigate the spirit realms for themselves or on behalf of another. Okay, so what it actually means is the one who can see the light, if you were to paraphrase that down. So the one who can see beyond what you're looking at, the one who can see the energetics of what's happening. And that's my skill set and my training. In the teachings, we work with the practices and principles, and those who go through the programs that I teach, they learn skill sets and practices to incorporate into their life so that when things happen, i.e. coronavirus or other challenging things, we know how to work with it. We know how to work with it beyond a reactionary place. We actually have the tools and the skill sets to look into what is happening, to look into a deeper level of what's going on with me. What's my response to this? What is happening to me on an emotional level? What is happening to me on a soul level? And we learn how to access that part of ourselves. We all get it. We hear it out in the world now, to talk about something on a soul level.
Right.
We hear that in the media. We hear it in TV. It was on commercials for the Super Bowl.
Was it? Did you notice that?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Oh my goodness, look at that. Holy moly.
Wow.
Yes.
So how, before we get into the coronavirus, let me just ask you, with all these shamanic practices and different versions of it. What took you into the South American tradition? What was your inspiration? What was your cathartic experience?
Well, Kirsten, as life would go, it actually picked me. So when I came into this particular path 15 years ago, I had not been one of those people who was like, I want to study shamanism.
Okay.
It didn't go like that.
Okay. You're like looking up shaman universities and
right.
stuff. Okay.
No, not really.
Okay.
My formal training was in massage therapy, and then I was attuned to Reiki, which is another energetic healing modality. I had been interested in metaphysics and energetic healing for a long time, learning about the chakra system, the vortexes of energy that run right up the center line of our body, and learning about acupuncture and acupressure and cranial sacral. And so I had been aware of those modalities, but not shamanism, not in that capacity. And I actually had a session with a woman who did astrological readings, and she was reading my chart. And she said, you would do good to study soul retrieval or shamanism. And it really kind of was the first time that I had heard that in that context. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And that was kind of it. And then as life goes, I was hired to be a massage therapist for a private retreat that was happening that then got canceled at the last minute. And the organization felt bad about that and said, why don't you come take one of our classes that we're offering? And that happened to be a practitioner training program for shamanic energy medicine.
Well, there you are.
Suddenly, you go. Yes.
The path is clear.
Yes.
As you got into that.
So I sat in class, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is connecting all the dots of everything that I had been looking for that I didn't even know I was looking for it. So it was really one of those moments. It was like kind of a movie moment, right? Where you're sitting there and it would be like, oh.
The big music would be coming up. Okay, right. I can picture it.
Yeah. So I came into it that way. Okay. And lo and behold, it has become the work that I do in the world. And that could be a whole podcast for another day.
Well, yes, because I asked you in today, I really want to focus today on this whole coronavirus situation because it has got everybody on edge, I would say. There's a little bit of an edge to almost everything. I went to an event last night and they were live casting it. They'd never done that before because there were so many of the guests who'd paid for tickets that wanted to see the speaker or hear the speaker but didn't feel comfortable coming to a group gathering. Yeah. And that's in a place, we're not in New York. We were in Salt Lake City, so it's not like one of the hotbeds right now of a problem. And so with that, the tools that you have that I've been a part of in the past have helped me be able to keep what I would call a perspective that allows me to be at peace more than I find sometimes with people around me. And I'm just curious, we kind of went off and I wanted to get a little bit about your background, but let's circle back now to the coronavirus. And this is a bad thing that is happening. And you mentioned bad things as you were introducing yourself. Right. And these are tools that we can take well past the coronavirus, but certainly something that people can use right now. Yep. So maybe you could give us an idea of what actually, as someone hears bad news, whether it's personal or a coronavirus type of bad news, will you tell us what happens in terms of the reception of that kind of bad news in your body and in your soul and such?
So first I want to set this up to say that we are energetic beings. We are multidimensional energetic beings. So we all have energetic bodies. We have energetic anatomy. And I'm saying this because it comes into play. So you're asking me what happens when we hear the news, right? And we have to understand that we're not just hearing, but we're taking it in. We're taking in the news. We're taking in our environment. We're taking in the situations that we're in. So we're hearing it. We might be seeing it, but we're also experiencing it. We're experiencing it energetically. So the multidimensional body, we have a physical body, everybody gets that. We have a mental, emotional body. We understand that as well. We understand that we can hear things and have an emotional reaction to it. We understand that we can hear things and have a mental reaction to it, right? Where we start, it makes us start thinking, right? We go mental.
Yes,
there's a phrase. It's called, I went mental.
Yes.
Right? So, we also have our subtle energy body that is the soul body, the spirit body, and then the wider energetic matrix that holds the wholeness of who we are. And that part of us is experiencing things. So when we hear bad news, and it's equal when we hear good news too, but we're talking about the coronavirus. So when we hear bad news, what happens is a number of things. First, it comes in and it will land within us at a place that may already have trauma around it. Okay, so when we have gone through something, if somebody has lost somebody to a virus, then what is happening for that particular person is it's actually stored trauma, right? So then they hear about the coronavirus and it's spreading and people are dying from it. And what's happening is that particular person is hearing this and taking it in, but they're taking it in through the filter of trauma. And immediately going back to the fact that this equals death. Okay, on an energetic level. Now, once it lays down energetically that way, because there's an imprint for it, because the trauma's there, the trauma lays down in our field like a scratch in a CD.
Oh,
okay,
that makes total sense.
Right,
okay.
So it's the one part in the one song that skips, right? And so you're listening to the whole CD and it's all good until we hit the one part in the one song. And trauma acts in a similar fashion in our energetic field. It means we went through this experience that was really hard and challenging and emotionally challenging, and we experienced all those feelings around whatever it is that happened. And then we move through it and we get beyond it, and life goes on in the way in which it goes on. And I'm doing quotes around that because that's different for everybody, right? The moving on part. And the trauma goes dormant, is what I would say. But it's still in the field until it gets activated again. Okay, so back to the example, somebody loses somebody to a virus, and then, it might be 10 years later, coronavirus comes along, and they hear the news, and what happens is that trauma gets activated. Bam. It's like double-clicking a minimized icon on your computer screen.
Right. Just pops right up.
Pop,
boom.
Boom. Here I am. Trauma. Bam. Fear, bam. Death, bam. Right? So that's one level of what happens. We hear bad news, it comes into our system, and it may be triggering a whole host of these other things that actually has nothing to do with what is really actually happening in this most present moment.
So someone that doesn't have history of someone dying from a virus in their lives takes this news in, and they store it in possibly a different place. They might store it in association with losing a job, and now, oh no, what's going to happen to the company?
Right.
So it kind of, you take this in, and you personally, each person has a different opportunity or place to store this kind of stuff?
Yes. So it could come in like all of a sudden we're seeing Wall Street has a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? All of a sudden Wall Street's not doing well. So now it's linked to money.
Right.
Right. So now it's linked to money. Money for a lot of people on a high level, money equals survival. So now survival is threatened. And we're seeing people die from the coronavirus. So death is really in play here, right?
Yes.
And so it exacerbates the whole thing. We are seeing workplaces have their people are working remotely, right? Schools, I've heard that some universities after spring break are actually going to move to an online model for a little while, right? And so what happens is that everybody takes it in personally. So everybody has their individual personal story of how this information is coming in. But what is also happening is that there is a collective emotion happening. And this is where it gets really fascinating and interesting.
So you're saying collective being all of us
all
together.
All of us together.
We are creating an actual energy, just all of us.
Correct.
Okay.
We are creating an energy together.
Okay.
So when you go to conferences for your business or something that's getting up and off the ground, and there's a collective energy in that space, right? And the collective energy in that space is excitement.
Yes.
And I can do it. And everybody's high on the energy of like, yeah, this whole thing rocks.
Right.
We're going to go out and crush it. Right? That's collective energy.
Like concerts. Like I can't stop hopping when I'm like, or jumping. I don't know what the cool word is for my behavior during concerts. I don't think there can be any cool behavior if you look at me, but anyway. Right. Yes. Okay.
When you're in the mosh pit.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, that's collective energy. Okay. That's a collective thing. And right now, the collective energy is fear. Mm-hmm. And so we may hear it individually. You and I may be responding individually differently to the news of the coronavirus and what's going on. And to your point, what about the person who doesn't have the trauma of losing somebody to a virus, but they're still having a reaction to what's happening? They're having a reaction to the news, particularly if it's laden with fear. They're having a reaction to the fact that their workplace is canceling events and saying, don't come into the office today, or whatever that may be.
The money
is
affects
huge.
almost everybody.
Yeah. Fear for our kids, right? I mean, that's another one that comes in that will take over the system immediately.
Yes.
I call it biology of keep offspring alive. That thing gets triggered. Wow. And that's it. You are seeing right through the lens of, oh no, what now?
Mama bear.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So, and back to what happens in the body is when fear gets triggered to that degree, it actually is chemical. It's a chemical reaction that's happening. Cortisol pumps through the system. We immediately go into fight or flight. And now we are the subject to the chemicals that are running through our field, and we're caught for a minute. And it actually will reset itself in about 20 to 30 minutes. So if we actually could breathe through that cycle, that chemical bath of fear and endorphins and cortisol that's moving through our system, we can come out the other side. When you say to somebody, just go sleep on it, things will be better in the morning. Like there's an actual chemical aspect to that if we really can allow ourselves to reset. Because depending on the scenario, sometimes you can wake up and you just jump right back in
your brain
chemical bath.
So you said 30 minutes? That sounds really quick to me in my head. Trying to meditate for 30 minutes would be like pulling my fingernails out because I just can't.
Well, you don't have to meditate for 30 minutes. That's just the chemical cycle of the cortisol and everything running through your field.
Okay. So
no, you're
back
good,
it up.
Kirsten.
All right.
10 deep breaths. 10 deep breaths.
So maybe you could help us. So we've got this, no matter where we store it, no matter which part of this bad news is triggering us. Yeah. Most of us are getting triggered in one way or another.
We're getting triggered in one way or another, and because there's a collective soup happening right now. There's a collective cloud happening right now. And whether we realize it or not, we are part of that collective energy. And yes, there are ways to consciously get out of that collective soup. And we can touch on that briefly, but that goes into a lot of detail. But there are ways that you can get yourself out of that collective soup. But there are ways to recognize that, okay, we're in the collective soup. Right? It's like when you go into a steam room, you get wet by the nature of the environment before your body actually starts sweating.
Oh,
okay?
Right.
So you walk into this environment and you're getting wet.
Right.
So when we're moving through the world, through the collective, we're in it. We're in the collective.
Okay. We can't. Unless you're talking about trying to get away from the collective by going to an island somewhere, which sounds lovely. But no. Okay. So let's talk about reality and not a beautiful island somewhere.
So you're So here we are, we're in the collective, there's fear, the news, the canceling of parties and flights, and there's quarantines, and you can't get into countries, and you can't get out of countries, and people are being held on cruise ships and not allowed off, and schools are moving to online, right? So we have all of this happening. The Costco and grocery store shelves are going bare, right? And so we're not only hearing it, Kirsten, we're seeing it and we're experiencing it. And the experiential piece is actually the more subtle piece, but it's the more effective part of what's going on, I guess, or the more impactful part of what's going on. That we can hear things, and depending on who we are, we can compartmentalize and we can say, I refuse to buy into that, or I'm not going to, or I'm going to positive think my way out of this. But if we have the affinity for it to really play through our emotional system and our spirit soul body, our energetic body, then we're making a lived experience within the fear. And then we find ourselves saying possibly like, oh no, I'm not that concerned, but I've got a car full of toilet paper and water and I wear gloves and I don't leave my house unless I have to, right? So it's like, where is the congruency and the incongruency, and how do we start to pay attention? And I think this is where we're going today, right?
What I'm hearing you say is the more you allow, so this is where the media would come in, the more you're spending time on TV, the more you're spending time focusing on reading online articles, watching maps.
Yeah.
Not to say you want to completely close your eyes and be, unaware of what's going on, but the more you're exposing yourself to this, the more you're bringing this situation into your experience, and the further it gets, or the more prominent it gets in your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
So what can we do about this?
Right.
Like, let's talk. What can we do, please?
All right, it's happening, right?
It's happening.
Enough. We know
It's
that.
happening.
Yeah. So this is what's happening. This is how it's happening. And what can we do about it? We can start by beginning to pay attention to what is happening for us. Where am I? Just stop. Take an inventory with ourselves. Okay, I'm afraid. Why am I afraid? Am I afraid because I was watching the news? Am I afraid because I've been told I should be afraid? Am I afraid because I watched this happen to a family member? Am I afraid because all my parental stuff is up and I'm afraid for my kids? What is the nature of my fear? We have to stop and take an inventory of what's going on.
How do you take an inventory of yourself?
You ask yourself those questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You really, truly just stop and ask yourself those questions.
Okay.
Go through a checklist.
Uh-huh.
Right?
And just write down where might this fear be coming from?
Where is this fear coming from? What's happening for me? How am I feeling about it? And then from there, depending on your answer, it doesn't really matter what your answers are. The process is helping you to understand yourself more, right? Because you may have been fine up until the one phone call. And now you're like at, code red. And so what happened with that phone call? Or what happened when you watched that news report? Or what is it that's actually happening? And from there, once we recognize the fear, we can actually begin to calm our system down. And we can do that in several different ways. We can calm our system down through meditation, but it doesn't have to be for 30 minutes.
Okay,
Kirsten.
phew.
It could be a 5-minute meditation, a 10-minute meditation, a 7-minute meditation. Go outside. Get in nature. Nature will reset our field very quickly and it will calm us down.
So just even going out on a simple walk around your neighborhood will help reset.
It will help reset. And from that place, what I personally do, so in the work that I do with people, we work a lot with coming back to the heart center.
Okay.
The heart center and what we can generate through that heart space is so powerful and so potent that the electromagnetic field of that space, and if we can hold love, it will change the way our body and our mind and our soul and our energy is reacting to what's happening outside of ourselves.
Let me stop you there for a second. Okay, so what you're saying is, and I'd like to hear more of your tools, because I've got meditation clicked into my head right now. Luckily not 30 minutes, but So you're saying that a walk and meditation, those types of things, or meditating while you walk. I guess.
That's great. Walking
Double
meditation.
Whammy.
Yep.
If I can focus on bringing in love, the concept of love, the concept of, I don't even know what beyond the word love, but love into my heart, it will actually change the way I'm perceiving the stuff that's coming in.
Yeah. It changes your vibratory frequency.
Okay.
Remember, we're dealing with energetics. We are energetic beings, first and foremost. And there's a great site called Heart Math. And I think it's heartmath.com or heartmath.org. But if you just go in and Google Heart Math, there's this site that has done all these studies around what happens when we can entrain into a higher frequency, into the love frequency. And they have studies and they'll go through all of that stuff. So if you want all the sciencey around it, that's where you can go. Heart Math. And it's stunning. It's a beautiful information. So yes, what you can do is bring your awareness, and maybe you have to put your hands on your heart. Maybe it really takes that kind of physical motion to get your attention into your body and out of your head. Really, this is what we're doing, right? Because we're going mental here.
In a good way.
No,
in a bad way.
In a bad way.
I see. Going mental.
We're going mental with the fear and everything that's happening. So can we move our awareness down to our heart space and start to cultivate a different vibratory frequency? And we can do this through many ways. For those who have a meditation practice already, who are seasoned in how to do this and how to cultivate it, it's quick. It's a quick drop into the heart space and shifting the energetics. Even seasoned people, however, when we're caught in the grip of fear, it is not that easy. Because remember, we're having a physical biochemical thing happening in our body, right? So it's not that easy for the most seasoned of people if we're really caught in that grip of fear. So we want to drop our attention down to our heart space. Maybe we put our hands there. Maybe we have to close our eyes. Maybe we have to go sit in a quiet room. Maybe we have to go sit in our car. I don't know what the scenario is, right? Each person needs to recognize and feel it out for themselves. But I can tell you that if you do close your eyes and put your hands on your heart, it will actually be the thing that makes your attention drop into that space. From there, think about someone who you love so much, who you are just overwhelmed with love for. And that kickstarts it. And then take that feeling and expand it. Take that feeling and make it even bigger. And you can do that with your breath. Okay, so with every inhale in, think about it. Use your imagination and think about making those feelings of love that you have for that person or that pet or that thing or that place, your favorite beach, whatever it is, and make it bigger. And then as you exhale it, breathe it out into the world. The world can use more of this right now. And then inhale it in to feed yourself and make it bigger and exhale it out. You take 10 deep breaths from that place and you will have changed your vibratory frequency.
10 deep breaths and putting your hands focused on your heart and dropping out of your mental and bringing love for something that we have in ourselves. Each individual person, whatever we can say literally fills our heart with love. And we breathe in and we take that love and we picture it expanding past our heart. And then as we exhale, we are literally delivering it to the collective, to the world. And 10 breaths will change our chemistry of our body. My gosh, that sounds like something I could do. Especially because I have a focus during it. It's not just like sitting there trying not to think about things, which is so hard for me. Is there anything that you would say in conclusion about someone who is trying to take this in and learn a better way and help themselves, is there any, like you've already given us heartmath.com or .org, we're not sure. Is there anything else you'd want to say to the person that's struggling with this right now? To all of us.
We're all, yes. The world is struggling,
the world is struggling.
Right? It's all over the place. The best thing we can do is shift how we're coming to it. I would say that we can't change it for the next person. But if we can shift it for ourselves, if we can recognize, okay, this is happening, and you spoke to it, you said we don't want to bury our head in the sand, right?
Right.
We don't want to be ignorant to what's going on. Something's going on. There is a virus out there in the world, and people are catching it, and people are dying. That's happening, right? So now it's up to us to work with how we are going to be with that. And that's what we can change. We can't change that that's happening.
Right. Okay.
So we can't go out and change that. Now, there are organizations and people who are. There are teams of scientists and doctors and people studying this, and they're coming up with ways of how do we treat it and what can we do. So they're on it.
Right. Trust
that. There are people in the world who are working at changing it. And if we are not one of those people on that panel of scientists and doctors, right, which I'm not and you're not. And so what can we do? We can work with how we're coming to it. We can add more fear into the collective, or we can add more love into the collective. And I know this sounds so cliche and woo out there, right? Okay, woo. Let's just add more love to the worldwide panic. And it sounds like, woo-woo, new agey stuff. And, we could look at it that way. But the fact is, Kirsten, that it's for real. That is for real. If we can add something different to the collective of what's happening, if we can raise the vibration, if we can shift from fear to love, then so much more can be accomplished. And right now we have fear feeding fear, feeding fear, feeding fear. And that's a hard energetic to work with because it's denser. It's denser than love. If we just talk about, something that's lighter and something that's denser, fear is denser. Higher vibration, easier to work with. So sure, buy your hand sanitizer. Wash your hands more. I find myself washing my hands more. I'm
a freak right now. Yeah. But I'm like, I see a sink there. I'll go wash my hands.
Yes. But I'm not one of those people who gets caught in the wide panic fear. So I'm leading a group to Peru at the end of this month. And frankly, I haven't really thought about it. It's not in my sphere in that way. I'm not thinking, oh no, maybe I shouldn't go to Peru or I shouldn't get on an airplane. Now, if I was leading a group to China, I may be thinking about it, right? But I've also taken the steps to look at what's going on in Peru. And for the center that I'm working with, they have sent an email out and they have given us information. And they have said, so far in Peru, this is not a big thing that's happening. We're not seeing a lot of cases and a lot of deaths. And so, there's a balance between, do we just go meditate love into the world and call it good? Yes, we want to do that. And we want to be aware of what's going on in our physical environment. What are we doing, right? And so, wash your hands more. Yes, investigate where you're going. Yes, check it out. Maybe you don't fly to that conference. Maybe that is the best choice for you. But maybe you do go and you take care of yourself, right? And you boost up your immune system and you wash your hands. And maybe you even do wear a mask on the plane. So we want to look at both things. We want to recognize that we're working with all things. Right?
Wow. I know that the listeners to the podcast are wondering what the heck kind of wine am I going to pair with this? Because it's such an odd, bizarre thing to be pairing to. But I do have a wine for you out there. So we are here today with Dannielle Bryan, and she's the owner of Shamanic Twist and the Shamanic Institute. and she is qualified to be a shaman in the South American tradition. And she's been telling us about how to move out of a paralyzing fear, or taking more of this fear in from the coronavirus and moving it into a place of love, so that we can help ourselves and our chemistry in our bodies not be so paralyzed as well with fear, but also so that we can help the collective world with our feelings of love. So what are we going to pair with that? Stay tuned. We will be right back after a word from our sponsor, Uplift Gift.
Stay tuned to hear what type of wine Kirsten will pair with this story right after this.
Today's podcast is brought to you by my company, Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough. When I had cancer, friends sent me the most amazing, wonderful gifts and cards, and they were from their hearts, and they made me feel so comforted and loved. And at the time, I was writing a column for the Huffington Post on wine pairings called Wines to Pair with Life. And so I wrote a series of articles about wines to pair with breast cancer. So in my public purview, people started contacting me saying, what should I send my friends? What were the best gifts when someone gets bad news? And finally, I just heard, this message that said, this is what you need to do, Kirsten. This is your gift out of your cancer that you can give the rest of the world. So the company, again, is Uplift Gift. And we help you support your friends and loved ones who may be far away from you, who just are getting a divorce or are dealing with a parent dying or are struggling with a new diagnosis. I realized people need help talking to others who've been given bad news. Since I've been through that experience quite a few times in my life, I feel like the Uplift Gift series of gift boxes are a perfect fit to help you support your friends. Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough.
Next up, Kirsten's choice for a wine to open after the show.
Welcome back to the second half of the Wines and Wonders podcast, where we talk a little bit about wine and what wine would go with this segment, which is a focus on the coronavirus and what happens when we hear bad news. I've got Dannielle Bryan from the Shamanic Institute and Shamanic Twist in the studio/office with me here in my house. And I thought maybe you wouldn't mind, Dannielle, for those of you just tuning in, maybe Dannielle, you could give us a little perspective on just a quick synopsis of what were some of the tools, what's going on, and what are some of the tools you delivered in the first half.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we talked about fear and what can we do? How can we shift out of fear and into a higher vibration? Fear is a denser vibration, and we talked about shifting it up into a higher vibration. And we talked about shifting it up into love, the highest vibration. So we're going right to the top here. So we were joking and we called it stop, drop, and roll, right? So what can we do? We can stop. We can take an inventory of the fear. We're in fear. Something's happening. There was no more toilet paper in Smith's. Okay. So stop. What's going on? What is this fear? Why am I having it? Where is it? What am I really actually afraid of? And what that does is it creates separation. When we can stop for a minute and we can actually investigate what is really happening with us instead of just feeding into the reactionary place and just rolling with it, we create some space and some separation in there, which begins the process to allow us actually to shift into a different state of being. So stop, okay. Ask ourselves, what's happening? What is the nature of this fear? What's going on? Then we want to drop it. We want to drop from being caught in our head in the mental place, the fear place, and we want to drop it down to our heart space. And we may want to literally put our hands there and get outside, get in nature, open a window, sit by the plants in your house, do something, get around something, nature in nature.
You mean, so just even outside?
Just outside. Just go on your front porch.
Oh, you don't have to be like walking through a deserted forest.
Go for it. But
okay.
If you're in the middle of your work day, right? And that's not going to happen.
No.
Or the forest isn't out your back door,
right.
and that's not going to happen, then just get outside. Breathe some fresh air. or go sit by a plant. You know, in my living room, I have this big giant tree plant in my living room, and you know, you can sit by something like that because it has a calming effect. It actually, there are studies that talk about, you know, the effects of nature on our biochemistry and how it will help calm us down. So nature is great. Outside is great. Fresh air is great. So stop, investigate, drop to your heart space, have some kind of nature-esque thing going on. Close your eyes, put your hands on your heart. Think about somebody or something that you love so much that fills you up with love, and then grow it even bigger. Use your imagination, people. This is how we work with energetics.
Is this like the Grinch when his heart grew?
Yes, 2 sizes that day.
And it broke the magnifying glass?
Did.
Okay, so we're using, that's what we're going for here.
Wow, we went from coronavirus to the Grinch.
Okay, but it works,
It works, you guys. Just trust us on this, okay? Roll with us here. We're about to drink wine. That might help too. So yes, when you have that love, you want to magnify it. Take a deep breath in, see it growing bigger, exhale it back out. Exhale it. Think about, you know, this exhaling of this love going around your families and going out to the world. We want to do our part in shifting the vibration. We can't cure coronavirus right now. We're working on it, right? But you and I are not the ones in the labs. So here we are. What can we do? We can shift out of fear. We can bring something different to the table. So breathe it in, expand that feeling of love, breathe it out, send it out to your families in the world, and take 10 deep breaths doing this. It will reset your field. It will help you to shift out of fear. You may find yourself being a person who has to do this multiple times a day, depending on the environment that you're in.
Sure.
Right?
If you're watching a lot of TV and you're just seeing all these horrible reports, you're going to have to do a lot of this.
Yeah, because it's coming into your field, right?
At you.
All the time. And so I don't. I work out of my house. I work in doing what I do, which is healing work with people. And so I'm not out and about. People are coming to me. We're having these beautiful sessions in my home, and I don't have my TV on all day, and I'm not reading the newspaper. Right. And so like I happen to kind of be in this little isolated environment, but it is out there. Right? And we talked about this. It's for real out there. So besides stop, drop, and roll and, you know, shifting fear to love, you do your normal things. You increase your immune system, take your vitamins, wash your hands, be conscious about what you're doing out in the world. I mean, you know, that part kind of goes without saying. We're seeing that all over the place. And that's for real too. We have to build up our physical bodies. That's an important thing. And part of that is to shift our vibration. You know, pathogens cannot flourish in certain environments. And when we can raise our vibration, it's just harder for us to get sick. It's easier for us to get sick when we're low and exhausted and tired and worn out and worried, right? So, I mean, that just makes sense.
That does make sense. So stop. Okay, so let me see if I've got this.
All right.
Okay, stop and take an assessment of where any of this fear is coming from. And close your eyes and just maybe write it even down and kind of go, okay, I know where this is coming from. It's because I just heard the stock market dropped or whatever. And now I'm really worried about money and all sorts of things. Okay, so stop and take an inventory. Drop from my head into my heart and hold my hands on my heart center and take in the feeling of love that I have for something that's undeniable. It's just one of my children, or if it's not my child because they're doing crazy things like often they are, maybe my dog. Right. That's the most worthy of love right now. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, my dog. And then grow that love. So I've stopped. I've dropped into my heart center, and now I'm rolling into love and expanding the love. And then I breathe it out into the world and into my family. And I do that 10 times, preferably somewhere in nature, close to nature, on my front step, in fresh air. And I try to do that as many times to calm myself down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will actually shift the way you feel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dannielle. Stop, drop, and roll. And when you think about it, because that's what we all learned, obviously, in school about fire.
Yeah.
If this is fire.
This is
fear
fire.
and fire is kind of similar. So it's the same. Very good analogy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much. So today I am pairing the coronavirus to a very bad epidemic that went, I don't know if epidemic's the right word. There's probably a word for plant-based epidemics, but it's called phylloxera, and it went through the Vitis vinifera plants of Europe. Vitis vinifera is where we get most of our wines from in the world, and this phylloxera louse or aphid went from the U.S., and our plants here that are not Vitis vinifera, they're a different species of plant. It went from the U.S., and our plants here are impervious to it. They don't die. It doesn't bother them. Unfortunately, there were some little phylloxera aphids that made it alive across once they have developed the steamship, which went much faster than the old fired ships. It went much faster, and they got to Europe with live cuttings of vines that had phylloxera on them. And unfortunately, it infested really all of France, some of Spain, Italy, almost all of the European areas. Certainly France was the worst hit. And it literally wipes out the plants. And so as this started in the mid-1800s over in Europe, this phylloxera, and eventually a French gentleman with the last name of Planchon discovered the phylloxera aphid in Europe as the cause of this, and then two gentlemen in France as well, Leo Lallemand and Gaston Basile, they were wine growers. They came up with the idea that since the American vines don't die, that perhaps the American rootstock is impervious to the aphid, and so they started, to the horror, if you can imagine, of all the French people, all the wine growers, the grape growers there, they actually had to use American rootstock and splice the lid, the top part of the plant, the European Vitis vinifera, onto the American rootstock. And yes, it worked. So now most of the world's vines, grapevines, are planted on American rootstock with European tops.
Wow.
I know. Who would have known, right?
I would have never known that.
It's like ebony and ivory getting along on the piano, right? But interestingly, there are just a few places in the world this isn't the case. They don't need to plant on American rootstock. There's some smaller regions, a couple regions in Australia. Also, the Mosel region of Germany, where they do a lot of Rieslings there because the aphid doesn't like the slate soil there. But the largest area that doesn't have this aphid, this phylloxera, is Chile. For some reason, number one, it's a pretty isolated wine region, Chile is. And also, it appears that the phylloxera aphid does not like sandy soil and low humidity. And so that is Chile. And so I've chosen to pair a Cabernet from Chile to this coronavirus. And let's talk just a little bit, because I love Chilean Cabernet. And you got to know something about Chilean Cabernet that is different than most of the other Cabernets from around the world. Now, these wines that they produce there out of Chile are big, huge, tannic Cabernets. I mean, you can hardly talk if you're not eating and you're drinking a Chilean Cab.
That's my kind of Cab.
Right? It's big.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, your teeth are purple within like 3 sips. And, but here's the thing. And it's so thought of this way that they even put this on some of their labels on their wines, which is, you need to decant these wines, or you need to use one of those bubbler aerator kind of things on the top of it, because the tannins are so big and strong that it will take 30 years in someone's cellar. Not that any wine's ever lasted 30 years in my house, but someone's going to have to highlight and keep low light these wines while the tannin drops down. But if you put wine into a decanter, flat bottomed, those strange shaped with a tall neck and then the flat bottoms, that's exposing the wine to air. And it artificially ages the wine more quickly. And they don't know why scientifically, but the tannins, the perception of the tannins is softened. I was teaching a class one time and we had a Chilean Cabernet and we had a carafe, a decanter filled with the wine from the same bottle. Carafe on one side, decanter, and then the wine in the bottle in the other. And we poured the group the straight wine from the bottle, and then we did it out of the carafe, and they had the side-by-side tasting. And I'm not kidding you, that wine that had been decanting for maybe 45 minutes, it tasted like a Napa Cabernet that costs $80. I mean, it was so beautiful. And by allowing the tannins to soften, it allowed all these other secondary characteristics and aromas and things to come up. The wine without decanting, people were like, "Oh my gosh, I wouldn't pay $3 for this," right? But this wine, so that is such a special thing about Chilean Cabernets, and the fact that they're growing on their own rootstocks, and many of the people from Chile brought vine cuttings from Europe to Chile as the emigration happened out of Europe. They brought them before the phylloxera even showed up in Europe. And so some of these vines are grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren of the vines that were actually originally from France. So that's kind of fun as well. I've chosen a great bottle of Chilean Cab that's in everyone's price range, and I'll be back to tell you about that in a second.
Next up, Kirsten's choice for a wine to open after the show.
Thanks again for Uplift Gift, When Words Aren't Enough, sponsoring us today. All right, you guys ready with your pencil or your phone if you're like my kids and you take all your notes on your phone? My kids don't take wine notes. Please don't. Well, my older kids do, I guess, at this point.
Right.
My 15-year-old still isn't taking wine notes. So I have paired the phylloxera virus of Europe that is not existent in Chile to the coronavirus that we're dealing with today. And the Cabernet I've chosen from Chile is the Marques de Casa, Concha Cabernet, 2017, but it doesn't really matter what vintage you choose. And that is out of Puente Alta in Chile, and that's within the Maipo Valley. It's just south of the city of Santiago in Chile. And this wine retails for just over, it's basically $21 nationally. And it has all of those great characteristics of the dark fruits of Cabernets and the leathers and the earthy part of kind of the barnyardy part of Cabernets. But you need to decant this, because if you don't decant it, all you're going to be tasting is just going to be tannins everywhere. So decant it for at least a half hour. So to recap, we've been talking about the coronavirus, the fear associated with it, some of Dannielle's tools, and she came up with a great toolkit of stop, drop, and roll.
Yep.
I'm excited to put that into use, and those 10 deep breaths, increasing the love that we feel in our heart, like the Grinch, and making sure we do this near an open window or preferably outside in nature or plant. And thank you, Dannielle. Is there anything you can think of that we haven't talked about today that you would want to share with the listeners?
No, I mean, there's all kinds of things we could talk about, Kirsten.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Another podcast. Okay.
No, I think within context, we've wrapped, stop, drop, roll into love. You can take your 10 deep breaths while your wine is decanting.
Oh, that's perfect.
Right?
A little time.
Yes.
Right.
So
that's perfect. So
you can
yes.
shift into a higher vibration. You can enjoy this beautiful wine that comes from the region that is not susceptible.
Not susceptible to the
susceptible.
Epidemic,
Yeah.
well, although I think epa means people. But anyway, the phylloxera that went through many of the other vines in the entire world. Yes. So thank you, Dannielle, for your time. And it was great having you in the studio / office with me. And we'll see you next time on Wines and Wonders.
Thank you for tuning in to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox. True stories with a side of wine.